the man who had set the galaxy ablaze was spawned from ice. Born within the reconstituted Empire under Sith Emperor Vitiate during the decades preceding the Great Galactic War, Varadin was identified as a Force-sensitive and taken to the Sith Academy on Droman Cass. Taking the name of Darth Malgus, he was apprenticed under Sith Inquisitor Vindican and quickly gained a reputation for his chauvinism, commitment, and fiery will. When the Great Galactic War erupted in 3681 BBY, Malgus and his master spearheaded the reconquest of Korriban and became the first Sith to cross blades with Jedi in several centuries. Vindican's death in this conflict marked Darth Malgus' ascension to the position of Dark Lord, and Jedi Battlemaster Kaosen Darach became the first of his many Jedi kills. As the war progressed, Malgus would become one of the most successful Sith generals in galactic history, leading a lengthy and brutal campaign where he dominated the open battlefield as a dark-side warrior. However, his many victories did not come without great cost. A major defeat at the hands of the Jedi hero Satele Shan in 3667 BBY, necessitating an extensive cybernetic and surgical reconstruction of his body, the scars of battle forever etched into his skin. In 3653 BBY, Darth Malgus would lead Sith forces in the sacking of Coruscant, an attack on the Republic's capital. Malgus slew several Jedi, including the powerful master Ven Zalo, yet was enraged by the subsequent Treaty of Coruscant. Final victory against the Jedi was in reach when the Sith Empire proposed the treaty, but more than anything else, he viewed it as a betrayal of the dark side itself, trading strength for a wretched peace. Murdering his lover Alina Daru to purge himself of weakness, Malgus returned to lead expeditions into the unknown regions, making his plans far from the prying eyes of the other Sith. His moment of opportunity arose when conflict resumed in 3640 BBY, as the Sith Dark Council suffered multiple losses, and Vitiate was seemingly defeated by the Jedi hero of Tython. Malgus gathered his forces and made a bid for the Emperor's throne. Though initially successful, his coup was cut short by the hero of Tython and his Jedi strike team, the ensuing battle leaving the Sith Lord at death's door. Having been frozen in carbonite by the Eternal Empire, Darth Malgus was freed during the invasion of Ossus, where he was christened by Empress Aquinia as the Empire's Wrath. Although Vitiate's empire would ultimately fail in their attempt to destroy the Jedi Order, the organization would eventually be wiped out by future generations of Sith in 19 BBY, which necessitated a complete and total restoration in 11 ABY by the Jedi Master Luke Skywalker. And among this new generation of peacekeepers came the esteemed Jedi Battlemaster, Kyle Katarn. A human male born on the colony moon of Solion in 23 BBY, Kyle began his career as an Imperial stormtrooper trained at the Imperial Academy on Cardia before defecting to the Rebel Alliance after learning his father had been murdered by the Dark Jedi Inquisitor Jarek in an attempt to safeguard the location of the mythical Valley of the Jedi. Guided by the spirits of the Jedi Masters Q-Ron and Tal, Katarn learned the ways of the Force and fought his way through Jarek's band of 7 Dark Jedi, before ultimately defeating the Inquisitor in a climactic duel at the Valley's epicenter. Though initially uncertain about his place in the grander galaxy due to a brief brush with the dark side, Kyle managed to overcome his doubt with his defeat of another powerful Dark Jedi known as Dasan during the Battle of Yavin in 12 ABY. Now a fully fledged Jedi Master, Kyle Katarn would go on to achieve unparalleled prowess in the art of lightsaber combat, training many of the NJO's most esteemed field agents such as Jaden Kor, and surviving the Yuuzhanvong's invasion of the New Republic from 25 ABY to 29 ABY. Katarn's achievements eventually earned him the title of Jedi Battlemaster, as well as a lifetime seat on the High Council, where he garnered a reputation as one of the Order's most careful and deliberate thinkers. Following the outbreak of the Second Galactic Civil War in 40 ABY, Kyle was hand-picked to lead a Jedi strike team against Jacen Solo, now the Sith Lord Darth Titus. Though ultimately unsuccessful in killing Titus, Katarn still managed to tax the young Sith Lord long enough for his allies to discreetly plant a tracer on his cloak, which proved instrumental to the Jedi's victory at the Battle of Centerpoint Station soon after. Following Titus's defeat at the hands of his sister, Jedi Knight Jaina Solo, Kyle stood firm with the Jedi Council's opposition of Chief of State Natasi Dalia, and was later instrumental in helping the Solos expose the former Imperial's implications in the Force Psychosis outbreak, and repelling the lost tribe of the Sith's attack on Coruscant. Generally accepted to be in his early to mid-60s by the time of his reawakening, Darth Malgus was a powerfully built human male who is without question one of the most formidable physical threats of the SWTOR era. As noted by the Essential Guide to Alien Species, humans were a highly evolved race possessing of greatly evolved minds and advanced hardiness and adaptability to sudden environmental alterations. Although these qualities alone would make any powerful Sith Lord a force to be reckoned with, Malgus was no ordinary specimen. The severe injuries he suffered at the hands of Satele Shan during the Battle of Alderaan necessitating an extensive cybernetic rebuild. His most visible and complex physical alteration was the respirator mask used to treat his damaged lungs, which featured the unique ability to maximize his oxygen intake during battle, improving his stamina. As far as the rest of Darth Malgus' physiology was concerned, there is very little information available regarding the exact mechanics of his reconstruction. However, my friend Jensarai 1 theorized that all of his limbs were reinforced by powered bracers, similar to the knee brace used by Jedi Master Thulm during the Clone Wars, an idea that I agree with. In addition to these implants, Malgus wore a set of Sith-style dark armor, specifically the variant used by Lord Aratus during the new Sith Wars. The armor featured plated durasteel pauldrons, a chest piece, backplates, and a codpiece, with gauntlets and greaves mounted on a ribbed bodysuit likely composed of armor weave, with reinforced padding across his upper arms, midsection, and thighs. It was proven effective against explosions, and likely possessed a limited resistance to lightsabers given that durasteel plating with reinforced armor weave has been proven somewhat effective against the energy blade. In terms of overall health, Darth Malgus clearly owed his continued vitality to his cybernetics, as he was noticeably affected by the physical degradation brought about by deep immersion in the dark side of the Force, displaying the yellow eyes and deathly pale skin common to powerful Sith Lords. As is usually the case for Sith possessing a combination of armor, cybernetic bracers, and Force augmentation, Malgus' strength was absolutely monstrous, being able to effortlessly shatter stone with the force of his blows and overpower high-level Jedi as though they were ragdolls. A notable display of his might being when he sent the powerful Jedi Master Ven Zalo flying 10 meters with a single augmented kick. Though easily struck, Malgus was respectably fast and agile for a warrior of his size, matching the wiry Satele Shan blow for blow on Alderaan, and he has even showcased the ability to react to and intercept Force lightning with his lightsaber. Overall, Darth Malgus epitomized the physical qualities of the archetypal Sith Warrior, and while by no means infallible, he ultimately proved his mettle as a true battlefield juggernaut. Kyle Katarn was a human male roughly 67 years of age during the events of the Fate of the Jedi series. As mentioned previously, humans, while not at the top of the evolutionary chain, were still noted to possess exceptional physical capabilities by the measure of the galactic standard, and Kyle was no exception. Though he lacked any form of cybernetic augmentation or heavy battle armor to push things to the next level, Katarn's use of Force empowerment made him an absolute monster even by the standards of his fellow masters. Despite his relatively advanced age, Katarn demonstrated exceptional agility and dexterity, and his use of force speed was highly advanced. He was able to react to and intercept force lightning as a young man, was described as casually moving at lightning speed during his time as a master, and had no trouble matching the swiftness of a slightly weakened Darth Titus during their duel on Coruscant, which would put him well beyond the standard council levels. Shifting over to strength, Katarn's most notable feats were depicted in the novella Dark Forces Jedi Knight, the video game Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast, as well as the short comic Equals and Opposites, wherein he fatally thrashed the diminutive Dark Jedi monkey lizard Pick, withstood the immensely powerful blows of the hulking Chistori Desan, and smashed a large Yuuzhan Vong warrior through a stone wall with a single driving kick. As far as durability is concerned, Kyle once again showcased levels well beyond the standard of powerful force wielders. As a rebel agent on Nar Shaddaa, he instinctively drew on the force to focus through a blaster wound he sustained to the shoulder, and later during his Jedi training withstood a flying body slam from the half-man Maw, as well as a glancing hit from Inquisitor Jarek's force destruction and even a ship crash. His most impressive displays of hardiness came about during his years as a Jedi Master, such as when he shrugged off sudden blasts of Force lightning administered by Tavion Aximus, and survived having Darth Titus' lightsaber embedded through his chest while simultaneously having a speeder crash into his back. While he was obviously left immobile by this particular injury, considering for the moment that other renowned Jedi of the same age group, such as Ven Zalo and Qui-Gon Jinn, were killed instantly by similar attacks, it still speaks well towards the Battlemaster's overarching endurance. In terms of overall health, Katarn, like Malgus, clearly owed his continued vitality to external sources, though in this case it was the natural sustaining power of the light side of the Force rather than any cybernetic implants. Overall, while he may not look all that intimidating, Kyle Katarn epitomized the physical qualities of your archetypal Jedi Battlemaster, boasting speed, strength, and durability well beyond the norm. However, like everyone else, he was not without his limits. When comparing the physical attributes of Darth Malgus and Kyle Katarn, there is honestly a striking similarity between them and the physical attributes of Darth Vader when compared to that of his son, Luke Skywalker. Like Vader, Malgus's armor and cybernetics afford him a noticeable advantage in terms of durability and strength. However, Kyle, like Luke, is faster, more agile, and possesses sufficient physical augmentation abilities not to be instantly overpowered. Katarn has successfully withstood the power blows of Desan, and the Dark Jedi would have, at least at some level, rivaled Darth Malgus in strength. Likewise, Darth Malgus has easily kept pace with Ven Zalo and the Hero of Tython, whose respective levels of speed and agility would have been at least semi-comparable to Katarn's. Despite how evenly matched these two clearly would be at the beginning and middle stages of their battle, Kyle's, for lack of a better word, basic human attributes limits the amount of time he can sustain himself compared to his competition. This isn't to say that the Battlemaster's stamina is weak, it most certainly isn't, but like if Darth Vader had fought Luke Skywalker unimpeded by love, I do believe Malgus would eventually be able to wear Katarn down thanks to the insane sustainability granted to him by his cybernetics. Darth Malgus gets the physical edge. Although much of his early development has not been thoroughly explored beyond his experiencing of a prophetic vision where he witnessed the galaxy in flames, there is no question that Darth Malgus was one of the most powerful Dark Lords of his era. As noted by the Journal of Master Nostaral, Jedi Grand Master Satele Shan considered an apprentice Malgus's force presence to be the most dangerous embodiment of the dark side she has ever experienced, even after years of fighting many of the most powerful Sith Lords the Empire has ever produced. If that wasn't impressive enough, the Book of Sith designates the Sith Warrior as one of Emperor Palpatine's most powerful predecessors, signifying that his strength transcended his era. Essentially a warped and twisted version of Qui-Gon Jinn, Malgus worshipped the dark side and dedicated himself to his rage, completely releasing himself into the currents of the Force. As mentioned previously, Darth Malgus' prowess with physical augmentation was prodigious, having used basic Curado Salva techniques to enhance his already prodigious strength to the point where he could throw around Jedi like ragdolls, and matching the swiftness of Council-level adepts like Satele Shan and Ven Zalo. Shifting over to telekinesis, Malgus' application of the power could best be described as a technically sophisticated battering ram. His basic force pushes were powerful enough to shatter solid stone, yet were also precise enough to pick out targets in a chaotic battlefield. During his skirmish aboard the Emperor's fortress, he unleashed a force wave with enough kinetic energy behind it to scatter the hero of Tython, and depending on your playstyle, his entire party as well. A feat made all the more impressive by the fact that the Sith Warrior accomplished it instantly and without any noticeable toll on his stamina. In more personal combat, he's used directed saber throws to strike targets at a distance, and force chokes for painful kills. Darth Malgus has also proven that he can reliably penetrate the telekinetic defenses of powerful adepts, throwing Satele Shan as a young man, blasting away Ven Zalo as a fully fledged lord, and, as mentioned, staggering the hero of Tython during his bid for the Imperial throne. The Dark Lord reinforced his offensive output with solid telekinetic defenses, his active force shields allowing him to survive Satele Shan's mountain-shattering force wave on Alderaan. Though I would be remiss if I didn't mention that she did successfully breach his passive barrier shortly before this. Moving into energy-based powers, Darth Malgus possessed a prodigious aptitude with Force Lightning, having garnered particular renown for his extremely broad range of applications. He could lash out at targets with enough intensity to kill or incapacitate immediately, and he has even disabled entire groups with area effect force storms. His most notable use of the power was the Advanced Force Maelstrom. Arguably his most powerful force ability, the Maelstrom functioned as a sort of fusion between telekinesis and Force Lightning, cocooning Malgus in a force shield while he stood at the eye of a storm, turning every loose object into a lethal projectile and a lightning conductor. Even Emperor Palpatine millennia afterward acknowledged Malgus' mastery of this technique, crediting him for thinking on the monumental scale. On a comparatively more mundane scale, Darth Malgus was an expert at boosting his offensive output through Dark Rage, to the point where it basically became his default state despite often presenting as cold. As noted by the novel Deceived, during the sacking of Coruscant, Malgus actually reached a level of fury so all-consuming that he would have killed his own soldiers had there been no Jedi present. Jesus. In keeping with this principle, while the Dark Lord appeared to lack any skill in the healing arts, he could power through severe trauma by feeding off of the pain. In addition to his aforementioned gift for visions, Malgus was highly adept at detecting the presence of other Force wielders through life sense, having displayed a particular talent for rooting out the locations of lightsiders. Though rarely used, the Dark Lord was also capable of suppressing his own Force signature from the awareness of other adepts, masking his powerful aura from Lord Adras shortly before their final bout. Last but not least, Darth Malgus was a reasonably skilled telepath, having appeared to be capable of delivering commands to his followers via long-distance communication, though the exact range of his skills have never been fully explored. While the title of Jedi Battlemaster typically denoted a Force wielder with incredible martial prowess, but somewhat limited Force abilities, Kyle Katarn was one of those very rare exceptions, his mastery and power surpassing all but the strongest of Jedi Masters. Katarn's study and application of the Force was heavily influenced by his experiences as both a Jedi and a Dark Jedi. Unlike other notable figures of his era like Corran Horn or Lumaya, who practically worshipped their respective alignments, Katarn's philosophies were more pragmatic, viewing the Force predominantly as a tool and the denominations of light side and dark side as distinctions of insignificant difference. Though initially fearful of his latent potential, which was described as immense on numerous occasions, Katarn eventually succeeded in his efforts to balance the two realms, studying a wide array of abilities from both sides of the Force and building up an expansive skill set. As has already been covered, Kyle's aptitude with Force empowerment was highly prodigious, being able to heal his body, withstand the strength of the hulking Desan, and match the swiftness of a slightly weakened Darth Titus. Moving into the realm of telekinesis, Katarn, like Malgus, could best be equated to a technically sophisticated battering ram. His basic Force pushes were powerful enough to punch through stone walls, as well as sweep away large groups of stormtroopers and Yuuzhan Vong. During a mission to Vajun, Kyle conjured Force blasts with enough kinetic energy behind them to stop and redirect shots from a Stokar concussion rifle, which I'd like to point out is basically 10 times what Kylo Ren displayed at the start of The Force Awakens, since Stokars are based around sonics and conventional plasma tech. This feat was made all the more impressive by the fact that he accomplished it instantly and without any noticeable toll on his stamina. Furthermore, one of the Battlemaster's signature TK attacks was the Sith-like Force-based strangulation. When he focuses more on control, Katarn was able to expertly manipulate objects, using directed saber throws to strike targets at a distance, and Force grips to lift massive power conduits and hold up several tons of falling rubble. Additionally, Kyle has proven that he can reliably penetrate the telekinetic barriers of other Force adepts, tossing around Sith cultists on a fairly regular basis, and even managing to override the defenses of Desan after he had absorbed the energies of the dark side nexus contained within Yavin 4. Katarn reinforced his offensive output with robust telekinetic defenses. He has parried Force pushes and waves from the likes of Tavion and Yavin-powered Desan, and has deflected projectiles thrown at him by Yuuzhan Vong soldiers. During the Undercity ambush, Darth Titus hastily outstretched his hand in a manner that suggested that he was going to attempt a directed Force push against the Battlemaster. In response to this, Katarn held out his own hand in a deflecting gesture, only to be blindsided by a Force-drawn speeder and driven onto the tip of Titus's lightsaber. While these circumstances make it unclear as to whether or not Kyle was in fact capable of blocking Titus's telekinetic attacks, the simple fact that he attempted to do so, despite having foreknowledge of Jacen's capabilities and bearing witness to the young Sith Lord casually ragdolling his allies, leads me to believe that he could. Shifting into energy-based powers, Kyle Katarn possessed a strong affinity with Force lightning, and though his range was not as broad as Darth Malgus's, he nonetheless proved himself capable of effectively integrating it into his overall fighting method. For defense, he developed skills with Force protection and Force absorption, notably using the former to shield himself from the acid rains of Vajun. Next up, we have what I would dub Kyle's special powers: the Darkshear, and the Sever Force ability. Also known as the Spear of Midnight Black, the Darkshear manifested itself as an invisible spear comprised of pure darkside energy that was capable of punching through passive telekinetic barriers with ease and killing targets instantly. Sever Force was the exact opposite, cocooning a target in light side energy to cut off their connection to the Force, usually just temporarily, but permanently if desired. A formidable telepath, Katarn shared Malgus's mastery of mind tricks, Force concealment, and long-distance communication. But he took things a step further with his mastery of battle melds, allowing him to synchronize his mind with his allies in the midst of combat. Furthermore, there is a strong implication that Kyle was capable of employing the obscure Mind Shard power, as he was able to neutralize the telepathic attacks directed at him by Saris and respond with an assault of his own. He could also utilize advanced Jedi meditation techniques to shield his mind from the corrosive influence of the dark side of the Force, a skill he taught to Jaden Korr. I know I've said this before during this specific verdict, but it bears repeating. When examining the respective levels of innate Force power, I believe Darth Malgus and Kyle Katarn were roughly on par. Malgus may have a slightly more rounded historical reputation, however, Kyle has displayed a similar scope of power, putting them on equal footing. Both also funneled the majority of their power into combative abilities, so there is no developmental differential to offset this strength stalemate. As such, this verdict will once again hinge primarily on the breadth and nature of their respective abilities. In the realm of Force empowerment, both were capable of bolstering themselves well beyond the sentient norm, and while one could argue that the Sith Warrior holds an edge in strength while the Battlemaster holds one in speed, these are capabilities that tie in with martial arts combat, which we will get to shortly. In regards to their respective skill with telekinesis, the two are very evenly matched. Both can conjure TK at a moment's notice, making their abilities equally viable in combat, while the attacks themselves are shown to be on par in terms of control and strength. While I believe the argument could be made that Kyle is the superior telekinetic in terms of defense, as anyone who could even implicitly block a blast from Darth Titus could almost certainly do so against Malgus, I hesitate to do so due to the sheer amount of ambiguity surrounding the showing. An inverse dynamic is at play with their energy-based abilities. Darth Malgus, as mentioned, possessed a broader range of attack applications with Force Lightning. However, Kyle Katarn's raw ability makes up the difference, which results in a great deal of canceling out. Force Maelstrom's dual nature provides a great deal of versatility to the Sith Warrior to be sure, but due to the Battlemaster's aforementioned equal prowess with TK and the nature of Force protection and Force absorption, its viability in this contest is sketchy at best. Things don't get any easier when we ponder the logistics of their alternative powers. Both are capable of Force stealth, so that cancels out. Dark Rage may allow Malgus to pump up his offensive output, but it's really nothing the Battlemaster hasn't dealt with before from Desan. Kyle's Dark Shear and Sever Force ability both carry the potential to bring a quick end to this contest. However, given the fact that he has never employed these powers on a whim while operating outside of a powerful Force nexus like the Valley of the Jedi, their viability is once again questionable. All that being said, this is actually one of those rare verdicts where telepathy is the tipping point for the scales. Not only does Kyle match Malgus in his use of mind tricks and long-distance communication, but he is the only one out of the two who has been shown using his psychic powers in single combat. Mind shards may not be the most complex Force ability out there, but subtly undermining your opponent's focus by targeting their psyche goes a long way in a protracted engagement, and in this instance, a little is all you need. Kyle Katarn gets the edge as a Force wielder. Already regarded as one of the most skilled warriors in the Sith Empire during his training days on Droman Cass, Darth Malgus' cybernetic enhancements coupled with his extensive time on the front lines crafted him into one of the most formidable lightsaber duelists of the era, and arguably the most successful Jedi killer of the Great Galactic War. In terms of accolades, Malgus was considered to be one of the greatest Sith Lords in galactic history, the Book of Sith noting specifically that his battlefield feats had never been duplicated even after thousands of years, which is pretty insane when we consider all the conflicts that ensued in that time frame. His capabilities were such that even after attempting to literally overthrow the freaking Empire itself, Empress Aquinia still considered him valuable enough to keep on hand as the Empire's wrath, which, mind you, deals specifically with weeding out insurrection. Makes sense? Moving into feats, Darth Malgus was, for all intents and purposes, the Darth Vader of his era, having racked up hundreds of Force wielder kills during his campaigns throughout the galaxy. His most notable victories were against Jedi Battlemaster Kaosen Darach, Jedi Knight Satele Shan, Jedi Master Ven Zalo, and the Sith Lord Adras, all of which easily being council level in terms of their power, skill, and experience. He has also managed to hold his own against the Hero of Tython, very nearly besting the extremely powerful Jedi Master when they fought aboard the Emperor's fortress. Shifting into technique, Darth Malgus's primary martial arts disciplines were Shicho, Sorisu, Shien, and Juyo, all of which were confirmed by the Old Republic Encyclopedia. Also known as the Determination form, Shicho was the tutorial style of the Jedi Order, emphasizing simplistic blade work and disciplines, though when elevated to its highest levels, it became a wild and randomized fighting style. Sorisu, also known as the Resilience form, was purely defensive, relying on tight blocking sequences and footwork to shunt aside or evade an enemy's strikes. Cutting a balance between these two was Shien, the Perseverance form, which focused primarily on strong but fluid lightsaber counters. Lastly, Juyo, the Ferocity form, was all about focused energy and emotion channeled into a series of staccato attacks, paired off with dynamic full-body acrobatics. Armed with a heavy-duty single-bladed lightsaber with a red-hued blade, Darth Malgus's offensive technique was brutal and uncompromising, using a combination of sweeping crosscuts and pin-accurate power blows to simultaneously bypass and wear down an enemy's defenses, then quickly executing them with either a whipping slash or bisecting cleave. The Dark Lord heavily reinforced these sequences with integrated physical combat and force abilities, having a particular fondness for grapples, telekinesis, and lightning. Moving into defense, Malgus's personal style took full advantage of Shicho's and Sorisu's attributes. When confronted by shooters, he would utilize a set of simple blocks and swipes to bat aside bolts, and when confronted by other trained lightsaber duelists, he would keep his blade close to his body and utilize a set of conservative parries to shunt aside any incoming strikes, while a precise shifting of weight and stance enabled the facilitation of deft evasions. Though prideful and easily driven to rage, Darth Malgus was a ruthless and pragmatic tactical fighter, distinguished by his quick thinking and comfort on the battlefield. In military engagements, he typically employed either a weathering strategy to grind down the resolve of enemy forces, or a brutal beatdown strategy by laying into them before they could respond. Though the actual strength of his forces often seemed underwhelming, in reality this was done as an intentional ploy to force the enemy to let their guard down, and give him the opportunity to catch them off guard with a surprise attack. This focus on brute force layered with subterfuge carried over to Darth Malgus's tactics in single combat. He was an expert at anticipating the responses of his opponents and using this knowledge to either preempt or destroy them. The best example being when he baited Ven Zalo by feigning weakness to lure him in close before impaling him. However, this almost monomaniacal focus on his opponent often led to tactical tunnel vision, leading him to disregard his surroundings, and, unlike Darth Vader, Malgus has consistently failed to take advantage of his environment or to prevent his opponents from employing such tactics against him. Although he started out as an impulsive and aggressive rebel who spent much of his formative years on the front lines, Kyle Katarn remained a highly respected member of the Jedi Council, whose wisdom and skill helped lay the groundwork for much of the new Jedi Order's early successes. In terms of accolades, Katarn was counted amongst the greatest Blades beings the NJO ever produced. Grand Master Luke Skywalker himself crediting his saber skills as being equal to those of the extremely powerful Jedi Council Master Kip Duron and the Sith Lord of the Lost Tribe Vion Gallion, both of whom could hold their own against Luke, and superior to those of fellow Jedi Council Master Silgal. This praise was not exclusive to Jedi, as Darth Titus, while slightly weakened, admitted outright that the Battlemaster was a threat to him. Keep in mind, this is the same Titus who just weeks prior went toe-to-toe with Luke and survived. Shifting into direct feats, Kyle Katarn, like Darth Malgus, was one of the most experienced lightsaber duelists of his day, having engaged dozens, if not hundreds, of Darksiders during his Jedi career, though, like the Sith Warrior, there are certain displays that stand out from the rest. During the mission to Ruusan, Kyle single-handedly defeated the entirety of the 7 Dark Jedi, including their leader, Inquisitor Jarek, whose power rivaled Darth Vader. Granted, both the novella and the audio drama note that Katarn's victory only came about by him cutting off Jarek from the Valley of the Jedi, but it's still an impressive display for someone of his caliber. 7 years later, at the height of the Imperial Remnants War with the New Republic, Kyle would best dozens of Cortosis armored Dark Troopers en masse, as well as the powerful Dark Jedi Tavion Aximus. His most impressive victory in this conflict was the one he achieved against the Dark Jedi Dasan after a titanic battle at the heart of Yavin 4's Darkside Nexus. Considering for the moment that Dasan, while operating outside of a Nexus, could hold his own against Jedi Master level Luke Skywalker, I think it goes without saying that Katarn's ability to defeat him there is nothing to thumb one's nose at. By the time he reached his Battlemaster status, Katarn was capable of easily mopping the floor with Lost Tribe of the Sith members, though his most notable conflict during this period was his engagement with a slightly weakened Darth Titus. Though he did ultimately lose the fight, it should be noted that Kyle was only brought to heel by the Dark Lord's superior Force abilities rather than his skills with the lightsaber. And even then, the complete Star Wars encyclopedia states outright that the fight was taxing for both of them. Moving into technique, Kyle Katarn, as per the Battlemaster norm, possessed an extremely broad skill set, mastering all 7 forms of classical lightsaber combat, as well as the strong, medium, and fast styles developed by the NJO. As noted by multiple sources, Katarn opted to blend old styles with the new in order to increase his overall effectiveness. The Battlemaster's core technique being a hybridization of Shicho, Itaru, Dejem So, and the aforementioned strong, medium, and fast styles. Also known as the Way of the Krayt Dragon, Dejem So was the lightsaber combat-focused branch of Form 5, and was built around the tactic of maintaining a strong defense and backing it up with strength-based counteroffensives. The strong, medium, and fast styles were the basic principles of saber combat taught at the Yavin Paraxium, and were based around the use of ponderous strikes to crash through blocks, measured cuts used for crowd control, and whipping slashes to overwhelm guards instantly. Armed with a long-handled, single-bladed lightsaber with a blue-hued blade, Kyle Katarn's offensive technique was essentially a light-side variant of Malgus's, using direct but calculated power attacks to simultaneously halt a foe's momentum and open up their guard, then quickly executing them with either a whipping slash or bisecting cleave. The Battlemaster heavily reinforced these sequences with integrated physical combat and force abilities, having a particular fondness for grapples, telekinesis, lightning, and psychic attacks. Moving into defense, Katarn's hybrid form took full advantage of medium styles and Dejem So's logistics. When confronted by shooters, he would utilize a set of static blocks and swipes to bat aside bolts, and when confronted by other trained lightsaber duelists, he would employ blade binding techniques to intercept oncoming strikes, which were then followed up by immediate offensive counters. The Battlemaster was also quite evasive, frequently employing leaping spins and combat rolls likely derived from the Suma rotations of Itaru. Although Kyle Katarn's military experience stemmed from a soldier's perspective rather than a general's, he was still an incredibly cunning strategist, distinguished by his quick-witted mindset and situational awareness. To this end, his battlefield conduct was based around flexibility and improvisation. He is capable of being dropped cold into intense situations and making quick and effective decisions to best respond to them. This made him dangerously unpredictable, particularly when one takes into account his extensive combat experience. The Battlemaster's strategies in single combat were a bit more linear. While perfectly capable of planning things out ahead of time, he often began as the aggressor and assembled his strategies on the fly as situations escalated. He was also quite adept at baiting adversaries into overextending and capitalizing on their mistakes. The best example being when he goaded Ma into rushing him, then slicing him down. Like Count Dooku, Katarn also used his extensive knowledge of Jedi martial arts against his adversaries, analyzing the technique and patterns at the core of a foe's style, then tailoring his own style to exploit it. The most noteworthy display of this being when he employed the falling water cut to dispatch Saris after successfully identifying the similarities between her style and the one employed by the ancient Jedi Master Tal, whose memories Kyle had accessed. It's all tied up, and since martial arts training and tactical prowess will be the deciding factor in this matchup, I will be proceeding directly into the final verdict. Although their philosophies couldn't be further opposed even if they made an active effort to do so, Darth Malgus and Kyle Katarn were very similar martial artists, both being offensive heavyweights with dynamic techniques handcrafted to suit their specific needs. However, as far as their skill configurations go, the two are actually quite different. As a Sith Warrior, Darth Malgus had the 4 fighting styles fitting together side by side like puzzle pieces, each form being a component mechanic serving a specific purpose. Meanwhile, Kyle opted to layer the 7 old forms and the 3 new on top of each other, alternating between purest applications of each and allowing him to adapt them for potentially any purpose. This made him a far more versatile swordsman, as he could effectively engage almost any opponent. This dynamic feeds into their respective combat showings. Feat-wise, the two have actually contended with many of the attributes that the other is bringing to the table from opponents with similar skill configurations. Malgus has engaged Battlemasters in the form of Keo Sen Darach and the Hero of Tython, while Kyle has fought the Cortosis armored Dark Troopers and the towering physical juggernaut Desan. While these experiences mean that each possesses a fundamental understanding of what the other is capable of, what separates them is their levels of success. Darth Malgus only bested Darach, first with Vindiken's assistance, and then by simply intensifying his offensive output and shattering the Zabrak's defense with sheer overwhelming force. He did not overcome Darach's personal technique, he simply overpowered him. As far as his duel with the Hero of Tython went, well, he lost, so we know he's going to have difficulty with more versatile opponents like Kyle. Speaking of the NJO Battlemaster, while the Dark Troopers didn't match Malgus in raw skill, they still gave him valuable experience against armor-based fighters, which goes a long way in a battle against the Sith Warrior. As far as Malgus's core techniques went, Desan was very much his era's equivalent both in raw skill and style, and Kyle beat him at the heart of a dark side nexus, so it goes without saying that he wouldn't be overpowered. This isn't to say that Malgus doesn't have tricks that would come in handy in this matchup. As we've seen with his fight with Darth Titus, Katarn can be overwhelmed by the kind of improvised counters Darth Malgus heavily favors. The difference is, unlike then, Malgus is elemental while Titus is pure control. What I mean by that is Malgus's counters are done on the fly while Titus's are planned out in advance, giving them a degree of complexity the Sith Warrior simply doesn't have. Kyle Katarn would not fall for the same baiting tactic that slew Ven Zalo. Why? He's used it himself. He would know that leaving himself open against such a fearsome opponent would spell instant death. As such, I believe the battle between Darth Malgus and Kyle Katarn would play out very much like a composition of Darth Malgus's duel with Ven Zalo and Kyle Katarn's duel with Saris, specifically as described in the novel Deceived and the Dark Forces Jedi Knight novella, with Malgus taking the early initiative, pounding on Kyle's defenses and pressuring him with his Force abilities, only for the Battlemaster to adapt and overcome, off-balancing the Sith Warrior with his own use of the Force and sussing out the ins and outs of Malgus's lightsaber technique. Ultimately, as the fight wore on, Katarn would have everything he needed, and when Malgus went in for the kill, the Jedi would counter and cut him down. I declare Jedi Battlemaster Kyle Katarn the winner. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this final entry in the Darth Malgus Mini-Marathon here on Versus Series Season 7. As always, please leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. May the Force be with you, stay safe, and I'll see you guys later.